All right, story time. They used to say that you'll never learn anything from video games. Well, I got a story that'll rattle your eyes. So this is back when I was in grade school, right? Still putting in my Monday through Friday. Hated school so much. The teacher tells us, tomorrow we're going to learn about the parts of the cell. And it just clicks in my head all at once. When I go home and I boot up the old PlayStation 1. Now, if you owned a PlayStation 1, you can probably tell where this story is about to go. Because I played Parasite Eve late into the night. Way earlier than I probably should have, considering the content rating on that game. But anyway, tomorrow comes, and I'm tired, but enthusiastic. And even my parents are like, something must be in the tap water, because Eris is excited to go to school. It's gonna snow or something. What the hell? I get to school, and I'm like, you guys, science class is going to be crazy. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Science sucks. You hate science. You hate school. And I'm like, yeah, but watch this. So we're going to school, and the teacher's going off about the different parts of the cell, the organelles. And I'm in class. I'm sitting, I'm chilling, staring into space, just not paying attention. And I want her to know that. And I could tell that it's getting on my nerves because everybody else is busy taking notes and being serious. But I'm just like, I needed to get her attention. But it had to be under the right timing. She says the word mitochondria, and everybody looks at her like she's speaking another language. And I start to yawn and stretch. I really starting to really turn it up, you know. And she goes, Eris, would you like to tell the class what's so special about the mitochondria? And now I've got this big shit-eating grin on my face, and I'm like, are you referring to the fact that it's known as the powerhouse of the cell? Or maybe the fact that, like the nucleus, it contains its own DNA? And that gets her attention. Everyone's shocked. All of the students in class are staring at me. She's looking at me like I just called her a bitch. And if you think about it, in the context of a student teacher relationship, I pretty much did call her a bitch. And she goes, how did you know that? Have you been reading ahead of us? And I'm like, lady, please. You know damn well I don't take this book home. She's like, you're right. You never take your textbook home. How did you know? And I go, well, there's a certain researcher whose work I've been really interested in. Now, if you don't know, in Parasite Eve, there is a character who's from Japan who researches the parts of the cell. It's tied to an incident from the movie Parasite Eve, which shares the same name as the game, but was never released outside of Japan. So far, I haven't told any lies, but now I have her and I have the class's attention. And I go, well, teacher, there's a Japanese researcher who studies the parts of the cell. Have you ever heard of the theory known as mitochondrial Eve? And she's like, no. What is that? What is it? And I go, well, it's nothing proven. It's just a theory. And she's like, how do you know what a theory is? And I'm like, I look like a freaking genius at this point. And I go, yeah, it's just a theory. But you know how the mitochondria is responsible for generating energy for the cells? This theory suggests that the mitochondria could use the DNA in order to kind of hijack control from the nucleus. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. You see, the mitochondria are able to put out around 1200 watts of energy, electricity. And she's like, how do you, we didn't go over that. How do you know? And I'm like, yeah, 1200 watts of electricity. So this theory suggests that the mitochondria with their DNA could output the max amount of energy for a split instant. So all of the cells in your body start putting out 1200 watts of electricity and force a stage of evolution in those with the right genetic traits. And she's like, you're like 8. Why do you know what? And I'm like, Yep. So this evolution would occur to those with the right genetic traits, and those who don't have it would spontaneously combust, which I won't go into because it sounds like science fiction. And she's like, what? What? She's blown away at this point, and everyone's looking at me like I'm speaking a different language now, and I'm just like, yeah, kind of a genius. But essentially, the theory suggests that, at least in the context of the game, that evolution is forced in humans by the mitochondria taking over the body, taking over the cells. And the people who don't have the right genetic traits spontaneously combust, and the ones who do have the right genetics will evolve into the next stage of humanity. The next stage of humanity in the game being a pretty lady who's able to shoot fireballs and other magical powers at rat monsters and other nasty beasts. Moral of the story is, if you know a kid or have a kid who's really into science, buy them a PlayStation 1 and tell them that they can play as much Parasite Eve over the weekend as they want. Because when they go into school, trust me, they're going to look like geniuses. The game is primarily, like I said, science fiction, but a lot of the science and the terms used in the game is completely real and accurate. And not to mention, the game is just a ton of fun. So don't let anybody tell you that video games don't ever teach you anything, because for that entire subject, I was the teacher.